Yeah, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. We're here tonight for our round 13 NRL recap. Let us break it all down for you game by game. Before we get to that, let me welcome in Winnie to say g'day and recap how our best bets went this round. How was your weekend, my friend?
This is a safe space, right, mate? I've got to be honest. Horrible weekend. Devastating. We had 4 best bets and reverse swept, lost all 4. Round 13's an unlucky number for some. And for me, to be completely honest, that feels like the point where I was going through the year saying to myself, like, it's a bad season and you're going to get a bad season. But a round like that, now it's actually like a horror show. It is really tough. And if you came here to give it to me, I'll help you out because I just want to give some perspective. It is so hard to win 60% or 60% plus. Like, that's for sure. We talk about that. Like, there's a massive difference between winning 60% to 55 to 50. But as hard as it is to win, let's say 61, 62%, it's even harder to lose at that percentage. And the reason it's even harder to lose at 60% than to win is because you can shop around for the best line. So there will be some games where the line could vary by a point or half a point. You're obviously going to take the one that's most in your favor. So to be losing at 62% so far this year is embarrassing. I feel like I'm undoing a lot of years of great work. And I spoke to Alex on the phone today, maybe for some counselling, and we talked about the amount of best bets so far this year is still less than 1% of all TryPod best bets, but most recent certainly matters. And the plays, it's not about how bad it is, or could it be better? It's not about the extreme variance and saying I should be closer to 50%. It's whether the bets would be profitable. That's what I need to defend, and that's very hard to defend at this point. We'll certainly go game by game. I know a lot of people talk about the issue around who you select and who you don't select, like with the teams, but I would kind of say, like, what teams are safe to bet on, right? Let's look at the best 5 or 6 teams in the comp. That would be Melbourne Storm leading the comp. Last time they played, they lost to Manly. The Sharks were leading the comp. The last 2 games, they've lost by 40 at home. They lost by 10 to Eels. What about Penrith? They're reliable, right? Well, they just lost as 10-point favourites yesterday by 10. A couple of weeks earlier, lost as 15-point favourites to New Zealand. The Dolphins were top 4. They've lost the last 2 weeks as favourites. The Broncos, they're reliable, but the last 2 games they've lost against the spread, including losing as a 15-point favourite. Well, the Roosters are a contender, are they not? Then they lost today. So it's like, who can you trust? I'm sure I'm not alone in struggling. I went 0 from 5 on head-to-head tips this weekend, and then you go to the middle of the ladder, and there's a lot of teams that are really yo-yoing. And I mean, we can get game by game, but it's like Knights, Warriors, Raiders, Finns, Bulldogs, Dragons, Cowboys. Can 1 week be awesome, 1 week be terrible? But that's not my excuse, because I usually love to embrace the chaos and I love an unpredictable competition. It's just that I'm not picking these teams in the right weeks at all. And where the lines move aside, that's that feels pretty grim.
And certainly for myself, I'm never looking for value on this show because I'm not putting best bets out there and putting my name on it like you are in the record on the line. So for me, I break down games down quite analytically. I'm looking for stats, I'm looking for reasons, and I'm looking for factual evidence instead of, previously on this show when I've come on and said I've got a gut feeling or I'm going to tip this for an upset because I can just feel it. And then, naturally I get a few of those, but it doesn't mean anything because, there's no evidence in a gut feeling. And so this year I've made a real conscious effort to break it down via the stats and give that extra, set of eyes over the best bets of this is why it should play out this way, historically speaking and stats-wise speaking this year. And you could have taken everything I said in the preview show, thrown it out the window, and just bet the opposite for the sake of it, and you would have had a very profitable weekend. So super tough.
Well, I was going to say, mate, it has been a bloody unpredictable year, but just about the best success you could possibly have this season would be once Jacob got as a best bet, I'm going against that. That would probably do better than any other method. I agree it has been a tough year, but that's not my excuse. I want it to be tough. I want it to be unpredictable, and I expect to have the upper hand. Just hasn't been the case at all. And again, we'll go game by game, but again, people give us feedback just to talk about your tips, mate. people give us feedback. We take it on board. We consciously, spoke to you about people are saying they don't want to hear so much betting tips or advice from yourself, like more so the information. So we actually talked about how you can give like opinion for sure and question any bets, but give less bets. And obviously the irony is that your bets would be going better than mine. I think to be winning like just under 40% of the best bets so far, I think if you took 100 people at random, keeping in mind you can flip a coin and hit 50%. I mean, I think it'd be less than 5 people would have as many losses as I have. Like it's really extreme. So I'm certainly not hiding from it. I am suffering for sure. I am suffering. I just hope not too many other people are suffering because I have to stand by every best bet I give out. Like I'm never going to give something out half-heartedly. It's just nobody else has to be behind my best bets 100%. That's for sure.
And I think as well, it is important to note, and I don't want to sit here and, be that guy that's on the sidelines offering excuses because we're both accountable in this show. We both
and I don't want you to make excuses for me either. Like I feel terrible that you're getting dragged through this, but I am asking, people don't pay for the tips, but they do pay the valuable attention. And I'm asking for that attention. And then when you get attention, you get scrutiny. And so I accept that. Absolutely. I deserve the blame and I hear it.
Well, I just wanted to add a little bit of further context, I suppose. And I have worked with some other professional tipping groups in the past with my page as part of sort of paid promotion and stuff like that. The key difference there I found is because I'd always ask to see like a few rounds of tips before I lock into any sort of contract with them is a lot of their tips are like, for example, in the Eels game, it would have been like Eels plus 20 and it would have been paying like $1.30 or $1.20. And that's their best bet. And the idea is, you load up on these shorter odds. Whereas we here are going for line plays, $1.80 and above, which is in essence, when we talk about NRL, a 50-50 bet, right? And if you want to talk other forms of methods of going 50-50, such as 2 up on Anzac Day, maybe a roulette wheel, etc., and you do that enough like you have for 10 years now, you could end up in a little period where it's just not spinning your way on the wheel or the coins just aren't flipping your way. So I think there is that to consider as well. Like these are 50-50 bets. At the end of the day, we are playing the line, we're playing the bookies. We're not handing out stuff at low odds and then, sitting here and sooking about it. But let's move to a game by game, mate. Let's jump into game 1 Thursday night. The Eels beat the Sharks 34-22. I did tip the Eels here. I thought they would show some signs of improvement, but I thought it would be a little bit more of a defensive effort from them. I probably didn't see them scoring 34 points with Mitchell Moses just back. I did expect more of a response from them defensively. So whilst this was the only game I tipped right this round, it didn't go the way I saw it, that's for sure. Mitchell Moses, his service to the outside backs was incredible. And I look at this Eels backline since he's been out, really poor, really poor. Like players that couldn't attack a wet paper bag, but getting that early service from Mitchell Moses, suddenly this whole Eels side was dangerous again. They were all up around the footy. They were all playing with confidence. And you have to think if he didn't get injured, Brad Arthur probably still has a job. That's how good they looked here. The contest did feel like a bit of a seesaw. I felt like sometimes the Sharks were getting right back on top. Then they'd make a silly error and the Eels would get back on top. And I think that was probably just the experience of the Eels spine as opposed to the Sharkies spine, where they did have Brayley and Kennedy, but 2 relatively inexperienced halves pairing there. The Eels have set up a massive game next Monday against the Doggies, which I can't wait for. Meanwhile, the Sharkies, whilst they came into this round in first place, they're staring down the barrel of 3 consecutive losses if they can't beat the Broncos in Brisbane next round. So tough go for the Sharkies, mate. How did you see this one?
Of my 4 best bets, that's probably the one I would want to choose otherwise out of all of them because I feel like that's the least surprising result to me. Like I respect Parramatta and what they're capable of probably more than others. So to go against the Eels, knowing that Moses, Gutho, like there's going to be that lift and it's not just on game day, but the whole week, that leadership, that voice that we're here, we're back and we're a different team, like that really would have revitalized the Eels. It's just, I thought it could be a good spot to take Sharks and in a sense buy low off such an embarrassing defeat. And in reality, I feel like I got what I hoped for out of Cronulla. Like Cronulla were pretty good, I thought, on Thursday night. What did they complete? Didn't they complete like 95% in the game, right? And score 4 tries. It's just that Para was so sharp, and that is a bit disappointing to me that like these guys like Moses and Gutho, they've been out of the game for a month or couple months plus, and they come in and instantly everything clicks, and Parramatta turns out their best performance of the year. Like, how many times this year has a team played their absolute best game of the year when I've gone against them? Because plenty of other times this season, Paris capitulated. But, again, it makes sense. They're at home. The leaders are there, Penasini back in. And if Cronulla want to look at themselves, you give up 42 at home to Penrith is bad, but the defense was not good enough to win this game either. Strip for numbers on the edges. I get it that Parramatta's a tough team to handle because they love to offload and they will chance it on fifth tackle, but strip too easily. And I just thought the desire that the teams, the gun teams in the top four teams, when they really want to win, they don't give up try line tries where it's like there's tackle breaks inside the 10. I'm thinking the Junior Barlow try, like that's a stoppable try, as is the Dylan Brown. And those couple of tries is the margin in the game.
Yeah, man. No, I completely agree with that. Theirs was like defensive lapses that really cost the Sharkies, because you're right, they did complete up around 90% in this game. They had momentum at times, and then maybe just their inexperience shown, or maybe missing leaders like Nico Hines, Karen McInnes, because the tries you referenced were very soft and yeah, frustrating, I'm sure, for those that were on the Sharkies there. Because we have a shorter round here, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to cross to Tristan Merlehan, the CEO of Top Sport, and get an exclusive market insight before we continue our recap.
That's right. Tristan usually lets us know how the bookies did in the last round, but I felt that might get lost in the shuffle after Origin. We're not going to preview round 14 till Thursday. So let's hear how the bookies did do this weekend. Should be coming to us from a yacht, right?
Yes. G'day everyone, Tristan Merlehan here from Top Sport, and we've had a very eventful round of football where there's been plenty of line moves. It started on Thursday night when the Eels were absolutely backed off the map, obviously with the inclusions of Mitch Moses and Clint Gutherson, and they saluted duly. So that was a tough start of the weekend from us. And the Friday night game, though, was something similar in a sense. The Knights were very, very well backed, and the Bulldogs were very gutsy and got a win, which was surprising our side. So that was a good result for us to get things back on track. And then was very much unexpected after Penrith jumped at that big lead, where the Dragons fought on very well in the second half to come away with a win. That one wasn't as big a result, just there was a little bit of uncertainty around the Penrith side as well. And then the Dolphins-Raiders game, another upset. So there's been plenty of upsets this weekend. The Eels were underdogs at one point, but they obviously did start favourites. But all the other games, the sides were convincing underdogs that got the result, which is sometimes possible. Obviously, the week before Origin, when you got a lot of the superstars out. One game left. I'm recording this before the Roosters-Cowboys game kicks off. We got a bit of an ugly book. This game moved from 16.5 out to 19.5 early in the week, and then has come back into 16.5 with no Tedesco. Obviously, he's lining up for Origin, so we've got a couple of nervous points we're sweating there. And just looking forward to the other game on Wednesday, where, as we know, there's been plenty made about Teddy coming back into that side. Queensland have firmed up a little bit on the back of that, $1.81 into $1.77. New South Wales $2 out to $2.05, and the line has remained at 1.5, but just a little bit shorter now, Queensland. So looking forward to that game on Wednesday. Hopefully back to winner over the weekend, albeit it was a pretty tough weekend for punters, and we'll chat to you during the week.
Thank you very much to Tristan there for that exclusive insight. Sounds like the bookies would have had a pretty neat weekend, you'd have to imagine, with this many upsets. Alrighty, let's move to game 2, Friday night. The Bulldogs beat the Knights 32 points to 2, and I got this game entirely wrong. My official prediction here was a draw, and I thought these sides were really closely matched coming into it. For the Bulldogs to not concede a single try in this one and score 32 points without Kickow, Burton, Crichton, and Addo Carr for half the game, which in my mind is all of their attacking weapons, is simply incredible. Now, I am disappointed here. In hindsight, I think I missed an opportunity. You have the Knights, who averaged the least amount of points in this competition, and they were up against the second best defensive side this year, and that's in the Bulldogs there. I did talk myself out of those key stats because of who the Bulldogs had unavailable, and I just wasn't sure if they could do it with all those superstars missing from their lineup. But with hindsight, I do look back and regret missing this tip. A brilliant performance by the Doggies. I actually think they're ever a chance to play finals this year, because they have shown now they can turn up and get big victories like this, even missing stars. And I'll just get big victories. Like, this wasn't a Sharks beating the Roosters magic round type score, 38-30 shootout. This was you get a penalty go early, but apart from that, we are going to defend our line with everything for the full 80, and you're not going to be able to do a thing about it. Really, really rare there. Great attitude by the Doggies. And for the Knights, I just look at their 4-game win streak now less favorably. With hindsight there as well, yes, they got past the Titans, somewhat controversial depending on how you sit there. And they only edged past the Tigers, Warriors, and Dolphins by 6 points or less. So I was definitely a little bit too high on the Knights coming into this one and too low on the Doggies. How'd you see this one, mate?
The Dogs are a team I've liked, but like this is a terrible spot for them. You know, they're even lobbying midweek. Why can't we get Burden back before the official word? No, 18th man can't play. I know they already got the revenge over the Knights, so I didn't really see it like I know that in the training camp, like all week, they can say, remember, they beat us, what was it, 100-10 last year. Like we owe them one at their ground like they did to us. But really, you already kind of vanquished that earlier in the year. And just to clarify something I said earlier, because I think I said the bet I regret the most would actually be Cronulla. Like having seen the game and how bad Newcastle was, I don't want the Dogs under 3.5 tries again, but I'm talking about on reflection of my process. You know, there was something to spot there in how good Parramatta might be. This game, I will get these ones, like I will lose my best bets in games like this because I would have never predicted this kind of outcome. Like, first of all, it's pouring rain. It's in Newcastle. They've won 4 in a row, I think, and then a bye as well. Like, they're in great form, but they're doing it on the back of hard work, high completion, and great defense. The Doggies come in without all their best weapons. The Knights, to be fair, had the better of the first half. And I don't mind who was in front at halftime, really, because I wasn't laying the points of Newcastle. And if Newcastle had no tries at halftime, just 2 points, that's fine because it meant they would have to fight even hard to restrict the Dogs to get back in the game. But I did think Newcastle had a lot more of the territory. And the Dogs' tries are kind of against the run of play. Like I lauded this David Armstrong comes in, and he's an exciting player and great athlete. But it's like the first try, the Dogs a shift. Adokar puts it on the boot because he's got no other option. And in wet conditions, a bouncing ball, Armstrong slips over and air swings it, and it's in Adokar's lap, and it's a try. And again, my best bet was Dogs under 3.5 tries. So beauty, that's just what I need for a first try. But that was 20 minutes in. You kind of feel like even if the Dogs score 2 tries first half, you're still 50-50 in the second half because the team total tries is going to be 1.5. The Dogs get another try from a completely uncontested bomb. No one's within 20, 30 metres of Armstrong. He spills it cold, and the Dogs score. Again, think it was Adokar again. So at halftime, it's 10-2? Yeah, 10-2. That's still fine. Like, as I commented in the group, we've had some bad luck tries against the Knights. We're still $1.40. If you wanted to bet Bulldogs under 3.5 tries, it was $1.40 at halftime because of the weather conditions and because the Knights were a big favourite second half to, if not necessarily win the game, to reduce the margin. And I thought the killer try was the Preston one that was pretty soft, again, off a Knights error, because the Knights have got to be able to defend, these errors. They defended errors when they played New Zealand. Remember, they played New Zealand in the wet? Like, that's the irony, too, that we talked about. Knights team is suited to the poor conditions. Did us, where was that country game against the Tigers? Was that Tamworth, that one? You may remember, the game I'm talking about.
And then they also beat the Dragons in the wet this year.
Beat the Dragons in the wet and beat New Zealand in the wet. So it's like they should be suited. Like, this is how to sum up how bad Newcastle was. They didn't do anything in attack all game. They didn't take any chances. They didn't chance the arm whatsoever, right? Which you think means they played it safe. But they also had 15 errors, which is probably their most for the whole season. So it's the absolute worst of both worlds. It's drop the ball every second or third set, but it's do nothing in attack. So ultimately those errors took a toll, and I still feel like at 3 tries to the Dogs, we still, we've got to survive the final 25 minutes, which you can in those conditions when you've got the Knights were on the attack and the Dogs had a man in the sin bin. But the 4th try is the, triple deflection, and Curran grounds it an inch from the dead ball line. And I do think that one broke the Knights' backs. So ultimately the Dogs scored a couple more after that. And then you can say, well, it doesn't come down to one moment. And that's fair. I just think Newcastle gave up at the end, which was pitiful. But it's a shocker for me. I really felt Newcastle would win that game. So if the Dogs had won but stayed under 3 tries, I would have been a little bit lucky to be on the wrong side and have a winner. I got the unders part right, but I got the Newcastle part of this very, very wrong.
Yeah, the Knights halves. I love that Colt points that out. He says total lack of creativity, specifically when you include that the Bulldogs had 2 sin bins as well. That's what makes it even worse. They did have opportunities in this game. They took the 2 early, and they just looked really, really flat, which is strange because one of the key reasons why I preferred the Knights in this one was the fact the Bulldogs played the Raiders off the bye, and then they had the Doggies off the bye. So 2 teams off the bye back to back, and the Knights' energy just wasn't where it needs to be. Let's move to game 3, mate, on the Saturday Arvo. The Dragons beat the Panthers 22 points to 10, and unfortunately, I got this one completely wrong as well. My tip here was Panthers. I was confident they'd get the job done, especially without their origin stars, because I've seen them do it for a number of years now. And I know their New South Wales Cup side is still very strong, as was the Jersey Flag. It was only a year or 2 ago they won every single grade from under 16s to NRL. So there's a fine development line here where, yes, their origin players go out, but solid enough players come in and get an opportunity. Meanwhile, the Dragons, they've never scored more than 18 at this stadium. Panthers had won 13 of their last 14 here. But most importantly, why I was turned off the Dragons, they had lost their last 10 in a row without Ben Hunt. So I just couldn't give them a chance here based on those stats. First half plays out. It's low scoring. Panthers are making errors, but Dragons are not clinical enough to take their chances. I think it was 10-0 at the break, and it's kind of the contest we were tipping and expected. It was a close one. Panthers dominant enough without putting them to the sword. From what happened in that second half until full time, I couldn't quite believe my eyes. The Panthers' inexperience and mistakes just caught up to them in a way that we've not seen for at least 5 years now. The Dragons just took every opportunity they had with a halves pairing of Jesse Marshke and Kyle Flanagan. The kicking game was better. The execution was better. The poise was better. I don't know what happened. The Panthers side literally imploded. And the reason I'm shocked despite the missing origin stars is I just haven't seen a Panthers side do this in a very long time. Now, I come out of this game winning, and I think that every side now knows the kryptonite and the way to beat the Panthers is to hope it rains, because they lost to the Tigers last year in the rain. They lost the World Club Challenge to St. Helens in the rain, and they lost to the Broncos in round 1 last year in the rain, and they lost this one. So the only time I've really seen the Panthers out of form horribly has been in the rain. Maybe something they need to work on. Maybe turn the sprinklers up high at training. I don't know. Dragons don't rise too much in my book, Swinny, even though this is a great win. And the reason for that is the key issue with their season for me remains their inconsistency. I need to see them follow up this effort and this victory for at least another week or 2. Otherwise, it's just still following the same up and down trend of their season. And you'll remember I actually joked on the preview show and said I should be tipping the Dragons here because they're due a win based on their inconsistent means. I should have backed myself there, mate, but didn't get this one right, mate. How did you see it?
No, I thought that was a real true insight, talking about the extremes of the fluctuations of the good, the bad, and the ugly for the Dragons, like week in, week out. They're a perfect example of, like, you go against them, you might get one of the easiest wins you like, because there can be a pretty limited footy teams some nights. Like, look, only a week ago where they held a second half lead against the Bulldogs, or not for long, because they lost that half 38-0. But then they can come out and do something like this as well. And they've had a couple of big wins this year, upset over Manly. But as for Penrith, we completely understand, like, it's a very different Penrith team. So we can't make a lot of conclusions about Penrith in this one. And even to draw form to Penrith, like, figure them out. 10-point favourites, nearly 9-point favourites here at home. But when you're a 9-point favourite and you're up 10, that's even bigger. You've blown it even further. And that's this week. Last week, they're underdogs. They win by 40. The week before that, remember, Penrith's 15-point favourites, and they were close to full strength. They lost outright to New Zealand. So figure that out. But this was the game where I really did start to think, like, some forces are at work against my best bets, because I'd liked Penrith, and I was tossing up between laying the 6 second half line, 3.5. It's another game where it closes 9.5. So you're beating, you're getting through the key. There's only one key number in that corridor. I mean, 7 can be, but certainly 8. But you're getting the key number in the second half, right? Getting through the 4, because obviously by game day, it's a -4.5, -5.5. I don't go into a game saying I'm going to win because I've got that line value, but certainly a lot of people do judge how good your tips are by where the market closes. I'm happy to judge every tip by the win-loss record, in the long run. But I do look at both, because I get very nervous if the market moves against me. And that does go back to my larger point, where I know I'm going horrendous this year, but if my tips were that awful, you would see market forces going against more of these games. You would see like me saying, oh, plus 6.5 is too many points. And then the line leaks out to 8.5. And I'm going, what am I not seeing? But we're not seeing these lines move against it. We're seeing the vast majority go our way. We walk in with a superior line. And the reason I really started to think, what have I done? Like, have I walked under a ladder or did Black Cat follow me? It's like dead set as if the teams changed jerseys at halftime because the Dragons were hopeless in the first half. I will say pretty stout defensively, the Dragons, to keep it, to 2 tries, but it's another game in wet conditions. But the Dragons did nothing in attack the whole first half. Did not look like threatening. They had one chance. They had a couple of repeat sets early on the Panthers line. Of course, didn't score. But they had one chance, I remember, where the Dragons got a penalty on halfway and Marshke sprints over to get the kick for touch. I think Flanagan's a better kicker. And then shanks the kick. It doesn't even go 5 meters. And the Dragons didn't even get into the red zone until the 5th tackle of that set. Never got a result once on 5th tackle. Never even had a half chance to score. And I said in the group, the Dragons have not looked like scoring the whole first 40. I fully expect they'll come out like the 2017 Storm in the second half. What happens on the first play of the second half? It's a line break. The kickoff return is a line break back to halfway. And the Dragons never looked back. And they won the second half 22-0. So in a sense, it doesn't really matter about the second half line as opposed to full game line, because I never would have kind of seen this result coming. And yeah, some things went wrong for Penrith. I don't think Leota played at all second half, Mitch Kenny, but that shouldn't, make up this amount of difference. It's amazing to me, like how spirited the Dragons looked, and even the Panthers. That try they got right before halftime was very fluky, like the young winger catching a ball in the rain, tiptoeing the sideline, just getting the grounding. And I was watching it going, like, I watched that first half and I was so annoyed because everything went Penrith's way, and I just knew it was going to swing and it wouldn't all go Penrith's way. And I was going, why couldn't they get a bit of a fortuitous try a couple minutes into the second half, not before it? Regardless, the Dragons did, completely flip the script on last week where they were leading at halftime, blown away second half. I thought that might mean you start strong, but in fact, it was the Dragons finishing strong and Penrith without answers. It's tough to clutch something, and it goes back to, yes, Penrith's missing 7 of their best 13, at least 6. But the reason I was all right going against the Dragons is because I think the Dragons are missing 5 of their best 13 as well. That's the thing. You can say, well, you get what you deserve when you go against Penrith in Origin time because they will struggle. It was a good week to catch St. George. I think, St. George probably feels it was a good week to catch Penrith, but that St. George team was very limited. And someone explained to me how they were able to just summon that performance second half. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I couldn't quite believe my eyes either, mate. Like, we talk about their inconsistency and having ups and downs, but that second half was still their best game of football they've played in tough conditions, missing their key players against a 3-time reigning premiers who, whilst they weren't full strength, have shown us in the past they've got more than enough talent in their pipeline. So absolutely crazy, mate. Congratulations to Richard. He cashed out at $84 same game multi there, and he's going to have Monday off. Congratulations, mate. You would be one of the only few people that nailed a same gamer on this. I dare say everyone else was keen on the Panthers. All right,
you get Adokar 2 tries and he goes out at half time. You already had your 2 in the bank.
Yeah. You wouldn't have had him for a third. No, exactly. That's awesome. Bit of luck that way. And unfortunate for Adokar, actually 8 to 10 weeks. So the doggy season gets harder again there, but hopefully they are.
Just
right
one more point on that is Siebes. Congratulations, Siebes. His Dragons got up. Says hates it for the BB, but love it for the boys. Best bets. People like Siebes used to say to me, I hate when you back against my team for a best bet. And now people are saying to me, I hate it when you bet on my team for a best bet. I think I saw the comment earlier on the kiss of death. And again, that's why you don't have to follow me into battle at this point. And I do apologize to Panthers fans, if I did have any influence on this match. I'm sorry to you. And I'm sorry to my fellow Finns fans for what happened on Saturday night, because it got worse for me.
Mate, they might have the dark arts teacher spot opening up at Hogwarts if you keep up this this streak here. Game 4, Raiders beat the Dolphins 26-25. And to no one's surprise in this crazy round, I got this game wrong also. I just can't get it right this round. It's crazy. Dolphins had opportunities to win this game, right? They had multiple field goal attempts. And so I won't say they were robbed like a large fan base is online, but I certainly thought they were really unlucky. Now, when I made my tip and my bet on this one on Tuesday, Nicarima was still in. They then lose him and he gets replaced by Anthony Milford. Immediately, I feel bad about that. Nicarima is one of the most underrated players this year in the competition for me. Jesse Bromwich, he goes off early into the contest. Lemuelu and Herbie Farnworth go for head injury assessments for high contact that was not penalised. So the Dolphins lose players for a collective of 30 minutes there for nothing in their way in return. They then kick a field goal and it's disallowed for interference. Minimal interference, but still interference. Fair enough, we're going to play by the rule book. However, the Raiders then interfere with Jerry Marshall-King and it's not called. And the Raiders' interference with Jerry Marshall-King was even less than Max Plath. So I kind of get it. I guess at some stage you do have to draw the line, but fans can say that was inconsistent and they're not wrong there. The Dolphins almost scored through Isaiah Katoa as well, and that actually would have cashed the -3.5 line, I believe, if it counts into a golden point there. Now, my initial interpretation was Rapana was not competing for the ball there. The ball had already gone well past them, and he turns into Katoa, who was next to him chasing the ball at this stage. Now, if Katoa was here, I'm going to try and figure out my hands. The ball was this way, but Jordan Rapana's movement is to the left here when the ball's in front of him. So I actually think the Dolphins were unlucky there. I don't think he was competing for that ball. I think he took Isaiah Katoa out intentionally. And Jordan Rapana has been sin bin multiple times this year for poor discipline and that sort of thing. So it's not like I'm, picking on him or just pulling the rabbit out of my hat there. There is form there. But the referees in the NRL just don't want to make the big call in the moments. In the moments that decide games, the referees are scared to make the big call because fans are always online and they're always getting criticized. So they shy away from these big moments. My take there was that was potentially a sin bin for Jordan Rapana. If anything, I thought Dolphins absolutely a penalty there. So I thought they were unlucky. Wasn't overly impressed with either side. Now, I need to be careful here because I don't want to sound like I'm being a Raiders hater. I'm not. I'm very impressed with this side's ability to get up despite adversity. And whilst all the calls that I'm saying are unlucky, that's not the Raiders' fault. They played to the whistle and won this game without their key halfback in Jamal Fogarty. So bravo and full credit there to the Raiders. I'm only questioning some of the officiating, I suppose. The Raiders are just that side when I think I literally said this 4 weeks ago on a recap show. They're going to dip in most games or some games, like we saw last week against the Roosters, and we picked it, and we were on the Roosters. And then there's going to be games where Ricky Stewart, for some reason, is just able to get them up. Like, they shouldn't have won this game. They shouldn't have won this game with how they played, with everything in this contest. I thought the Dolphins were probably the better side, but they find a way to win. The problem I'm finding is it's easy to find games where we can get the line against the Raiders. We did that last round, and we've got it one or two other times this year. It's what makes this side tick. What makes them respond for Ricky Stewart? Once we can figure that out, then we can start to circle these games where we think, okay, they'll be up for that. Okay, that's an away game where no one expects them to win, so get them at the line here. But I still can't put my finger on exactly what makes this Raiders side respond for Ricky, as impressive as it is, mate. How'd you see this game, and what are you looking for in the Raiders going forward this year?
The Raiders are hard to pick, but these bottom 8 sides, that's the thing. They're inconsistent. And you might say, oh, well, pressure's off if they're away from home, not expected to win. But again, like, you think the Raiders would more so get up for home games where they like the conditions. They really want to play well for their members. It's tough. I didn't think this was a great spot for Canberra. I'll probably give them a bit more credit than you have. Although, of all the things you said that went wrong for the Finns, did you even mention Trey Fuller? Didn't play the final 20 as well, right?
Mate, I bet on him to score a try when he got knocked down.
A lot did go wrong for the Finns, for sure. You mentioned some refereeing. The ref made the big call ruling out the winning field goal, which I give credit for that, like having balls to call out against the home team. I'll talk about the Rapana contest Katoa in extra time later. I actually don't have an issue with that. And that would have been an amazing way to win a best bet and avoid a sweep. Like, trust me, no one in the world wanted that to be a try more than me. And for a second, when that grabber went in behind, I saw it open up. I saw the gap, and I thought, we've done it. Like, when you lay 3.5, you don't deserve to win by 4 in extra time. But it was there. I was that close. For a moment in my mind, I said we won until we did it. Right? I actually think if Rapana is a split second later, it is a penalty. You know what would have been harsh would have been no penalty try, just a penalty. would have been exactly the same result for the Finns, but my bet would have lost. So I thought that was in play. But if Rapana's any later, I think it's a penalty, but I think he just did enough to make it shoulder to shoulder. I'll give Rapana a hell of a lot of credit, man. Like, steps up for these conversions and he stabs at him. It's like a toe punt, but he drained every single one. And he kicked 2 field goals in this game as well. Like, that's clutch. I talk about I don't feel too frightened by Rapana. Doesn't threaten from the fullback role more, compared to the majority of the competition have real weapons there. But you see all the value he brings to his footy team, the way that he competes on everything. And his team needed, every one of those plays out of him in this game. There was, of all the refereeing calls, there was actually one I had a bigger gripe with, and that was when it was 18-all with about 15 to go, and the Finns contested a kick, caught it 10 metres out, and then offloaded into the centre. I think it was Avarillo, who was then tackled without the ball 5 metres from the try line. And the referee said, there was another player there. I don't think he would have scored. To me, okay, if you tackle someone without the ball about to hit the try line, if you don't think he would have scored, it's not a penalty try. But either way, it's a professional foul, is it not? So I thought, ask Cooper Cronk got a sin bin for the same thing in the grand final against the Raiders. Like, I thought there was a precedent, like a few weeks ago, I got stiffed in a really close game where Tennis Lesniak was taken out midair and definitely would have scored. But the ref's like, yeah, he probably would have, but we don't usually give a penalty try or a sin bin for a tackle like that, so I didn't really feel like it. But in this, the precedent is that's a sin bin. And why I am a bit dirty on that one is because the 3 tackles later and the Raiders scored the very next touch. So you don't know how the game's going to play out. But at 18-all, if the Raiders get someone in the bin and there's only 15 to go, I got a pretty decent chance of covering, that short line 3.5. Instead, the Raiders hit the front. However, to say all that, I do not want to take away from the Raiders' win because I reckon that they fought for the entirety of the contest. You also have to talk about a pretty fluky try by the Finns. Was it the 3rd or the 4th one where Katoa offloaded into the feet of Lemuelu, and then the Raiders totally whiffed on coming up with the loose ball in the in goal, and Avarillo dives and gets a ground. That's a fluky try, right? And even the final try for the Finns that tied the game again was off a bomb, bounces. You let a ball bounce at your peril, sure, but it always takes a stroke of luck to score off a try, late in the game. And yes, the Finns had field goal chances to win, but so did the Raiders. Anybody could have won it. And I think the Raiders also messed up a couple of chances where they could have scored further as well. So I just think that Raiders side was playing inspired. These young halves, Weeks, Strange, ripping in, these young kids, they don't know any other way. And obviously Whitehead was back. So there's that mix of veteran leadership. It's still generally a pretty raw side for Ricky. But you saw the good and bad, how good they can be, and also that they can be inconsistent and switch off in patches. But when it goes to Golden Point, anybody's game. And I do say congratulations to the Raiders, even though obviously that hurt on many levels. It was a really entertaining game of footy.
Yeah, back and forth, entertaining for everyone but betters of the Dolphins. Maybe I'm being a bit too salty with that Jordan Rapana potential sin bin there. Maybe I was just seeing it a little bit different there.
Well, let us know in the comments. It was shoulder to shoulder, but I kind of get what you mean because the ball was actually traveling a slightly different way. So Rapana knew exactly what he was doing going shoulder to shoulder, but he wasn't traveling directly towards the ball. I get that. Jeez, I actually do completely. He wasn't in position when that ball was kicked through, which is why Katoa went for it. To get there, I tip my cap to him.
Yeah, I think I agree it was shoulder to shoulder. I just think that he changed his line as opposed to going for the football, and the line that he changed to wasn't in the direction of the footy at that stage. If the footy was on the left side of Katoa, fair enough, shoulder to shoulder, you're going for that footy, right? But the footy was in front of him. That's where I guess I take aim to it. But I already saw a few people on Instagram said that they disagree, so maybe I am seeing that wrong there. Let's move to the final game of the round, mate. Cowboys, they just beat the Roosters 18 points to 16. Now, I was tipping Roosters here on our preview show, and I can't remember what the line was there. Do you remember off the top of your head?
On Tuesday, the line was 17.5.
And I remember I really bulked at that and thought that's a line where I'm not getting enough value on the Cowboys with their defensive issues. But I also, can't really trust the Roosters to cover such a large score there. I did have a look last night when the reports first came out that Teddy is on standby to replace Dylan Edwards. I immediately thought, given how important Origin is, the fact he's a former skipper of the state, how much it means to him, he'll be pulled out of this game. And the Cowboys did move to 19.5 there. And I did get a little bit keen on them. I'm not going to lie there. But I think ultimately it's unfair for us to come here and say, I changed my tip. It's like having an each way bet. What we say on Tuesday is what we'll stick by. So I did get this game wrong as far as that is concerned. And I'm in two minds on how to recap this because how I actually played the game was entirely different to what I previewed on Tuesday. But my takeaway was the Roosters just didn't look as motivated. I know they've got the bye this week, so maybe looking forward a little bit, maybe underestimating the Cowboys and thinking it'd be a bit of a park run before the bye, reset, refresh, get a week away from footy. And they just didn't look the same side that they looked against the Raiders, where even when they got out to an early lead, they still looked hungry and they still stayed in that fight. In this game, they got it to a lead and it was kind of like, all right, kick the feet up. And then the Cowboys would get back within reach. And then eventually the Cowboys didn't come within reach. They came over the top and got them here. Now, the Cowboys don't rise in my books from this one, just like the Dragons don't because of that level of inconsistency. For the Cowboys, that inconsistency is mainly in New South Wales. I just haven't seen them win enough in Sydney, mainly. They were smoked badly by the Eels. Not smoked badly by the Eels. They were beaten by the Eels in Sydney and smoked badly by the Sharks. So I'm still not 100% convinced that this Cowboys side should rise in my books until I see a level of consistency in their game. And I'm not too worried about the Roosters. I still know that this side, when they are full strength and when they do switch on and play to their potential, they can beat anyone on their day. I know that Panthers are their bogey side. That's the one they can't get over. But in a finals game, I'm still going to give the Roosters a chance, Winnie. I think they can beat anyone on their day playing at their best footy. What they're at risk of, Winnie, with games like this is missing the top four. And as we know, you simply must be in that top four if you want to be a genuine premiership contender. We haven't seen a side win outside of the top four for I don't know how long. But when the Roosters throw games away like this, where they were as high as 20-point favourites at one stage, that will hurt you on the NRL ladder and put you at risk of falling out of that top four. How did you see this one they made? It was a shocking result to end a shocking round of results.
At least I wasn't on this because the line had moved too far. But I expected the Roosters should win and win well. Look, I do think you're being a bit too harsh with your assessment some of these games, like saying, I don't increase my rating of the Dragons. I don't give the Raiders much more credit. I don't give the Cowboys. Actually, these teams all do deserve credit for these upset wins. Yes, you can say, the opponent, this went against them. They didn't have that player. But all these teams that won, and, the Bulldogs as well, Bulldogs, Dragons, Cowboys, Raiders, they're winning without a couple of their best players too. The story of the line in this one, and someone commented at NRL Master or something that they got the 10.5 on the Cowboys, which was the look-ahead line, which was very smart, knowing that Origin was going to hurt the Cowboys, more so than the Roosters. And I talked about that on Tuesday. You could have got a 10.5. By Tuesday, when the teams were named, it was 17.5. That line just kept increasing. So it got out to 19.5. And that's just purely people saying this is a Roosters team with their full strength spine at home, more depth. And the Cowboys have 6 out for Origin and are inconsistent at the best of times. The line goes to 19.5. You make a good point, though, that on Saturday, the news was that Tedesco was on standby and that Edwards had the quad injury, which is just heartbreaking. I do want to say, like of all times, for Edwards to be making his Origin debut and to be kind of handed the baton to take over, be one of the Blues' most important players, and he's obviously gotten injured at training, which is so unlucky. You feel for Edwards, right? But just from a market perspective, that news comes out. If there's very little in it, that's likely. I feel like that could be kept a bit more quiet. The fact that it was well known, there was something to it. Maybe at that point on Saturday, it was like a 50-50 or even a 1 in 3 chance Teddy plays. So I think that was the moment to play the Cowboys because it was 19.5 and it didn't move. And you had that possibility now that you might not go against Tedesco. And then everyone says, oh, well, it doesn't matter if it's Tedesco because you just put Manu back there. But it does because you go from having Tedesco and Manu to just one. And that did allow the Cowboys to key in on Manu, and he was actually really well restricted all afternoon. I thought the Cowboys just played with more desperation in this game than just about any other game. How many games this year have I said the Cowboys would have won if it meant a lot to them to defend? That Titans game, they didn't let you get out 24-0. They would have beat you if they really bit down on the mouth guard and wanted to win at home to the Finns a few weeks ago. Like, they wouldn't have given up 28 points to an understrength Finns. And you come down to Sydney and you hold the Roosters to 2 tries, 16 points, but it was just 2 tries. And I thought the Roosters would get the bickies on the stroke of half time where that shift and the Cowboys tried to shut it down and got a hand on the ball, which flung it forward, but it was off Cowboys. Dom Young makes a line break, and then it's the class of Sam Walker goes blindside, puts Dom Young over and kicks the sideline conversion. That was a huge difference because the score was 8-4 and it became 14-4. And I thought, well, the Cowboys can't have a break like that and give up 6 points right before halftime. But where the Cowboys won this game was when you wouldn't have expected it, when Lukey got 10 in the bin. That was the moment where the Roosters could have really grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck. In fact, the Cowboys scored 8 points, outscored the Roosters 8-0 in that period, actually scored a try and then got a penalty later and took the 2, even though they were down 6 points, just to absorb some more time and cut that lead. Remember I said how uncommon it is for a team down 6 to take the 2? This actually made sense because they were still down to 12 men. And so they cut the lead to 4 and then actually got the winning try afterwards and had to do some defending right down to the final play. But it's another game where some of these young fellas like Fini Fuiaki, Griffin Neem, this young outside backs, who was Purdue, like the 18-year-old Undebu was unreal. Like the young fellas really stepped it up. Drinky led by example, and Taumalolo wound back the clock. And I do think to a degree the Roosters took them a little for granted. And so getting right back to can the Roosters win the comp on their best day? We know they can. But are they in danger of missing the 4? I think you're dead on there, because how many upsets can I think of off the top of my head for the Roosters this year? They lost today as 17-point favourites. They lost to the Dogs where they were like a 9 or a 10-point favourite. They lost to Manly. They were a short favourite. They lost to Magic Round. They were favourites against the Sharks. These are the games you're meant to win. You're not going to get them all, but they're the ones that you look back on when you ultimately finish like 5th or 6th and get no second chances, no week off in the finals. Or even before that, when there's a month to go and you're still fighting to make sure you're in the finals, these are the wins that you should have been able to bank. And I reckon the moment that Tedesco was basically announced that he wouldn't be in Origin was actually a good time to bet the Roosters and say, now Teddy doesn't have to go through the rigors of Origin. He's going to have an even greater edge to his club footy. The Roosters don't miss him. This could be when the Roosters charge. And, luckily I didn't kind of share that play, but it was just a sentiment I had. You would have definitely expected them to win the game today regardless. And it doesn't matter what line you got. Unfortunately, the Roosters didn't even win in the end, but I do think ultimately it's about a Cowboys team that showed pure desperation. I do give them a lot of credit for that. When you can add 6 Origin sides back into this team that has now won 3 in a row.
Yeah, man, and for the Cowboys, they've had those close games. The other one in that was the Panthers one where they were close. Great game by the Cowboys. Not so much for the Roosters. They'll be better after the bye. We need to close this show because my son or daughter are beating each other up in the background. I'm sorry you guys just heard that. But we've got a different schedule for you this week. Monday, 5:30 p.m. So tomorrow, we are going to have our State of Origin opener preview. Winnie, are we allowed to say who's our third host on this show?
Yes, we're going to bring in another voice. You need some real NRL expertise. So bring in the man who is on a hot run, Nicole from Wiki, to give us his observations and try scorer tips and with a creative market. I said this is real. This does affect me, of course it does. So I am truly depressed about it all. But I'm hoping that Origin allows me to look at a different form of footy. You and I both picked the winner in every Origin game last year, which is saying something because there was an upset in 2 of the 3 games. So I'm really looking forward to that challenge and to get straight back into it and to break down Origin tomorrow at 5:30. We did tell you that would be Tuesday. We just decided we're going to know enough about what we need to know on Monday. Let's put the show out there, give it a longer shelf life, 2 days to consume it. But of course, we appreciate you if you do tune in live. Tuesday, I'm putting together a special NBA Finals preview. So the NBA Finals actually starts on Friday, and I love it. Looking forward to that too. We've got so many great people in the group that contribute NBA content. It's going to bring a lot of tips together and make a short video. It won't necessarily be a podcast, but a video release on the TryPod socials of everyone's tips, including my own for the NBA. Wednesday, nothing from us. Enjoy the footy. Biggest game of the year so far. Thursday, we'll come back 5:30, right? And we will give you a little mini recap of Origin, but then do our best for round 14. You can get ready if you want to jump on the opposite of anything I tip. And then we'll be back to kind of regular programming. I mean, round 14 can sometimes be a tricky one. You don't know who's going to back up and who's not. But it's been tough to pick even if we know who's playing in these games.
Yeah,
So,
we'll have to look into that too, mate, because I think the ARLC might have changed the rule this year where you can't back up from Origin. You can't play 2 games in 7 days. So let's research that, and that could be a way where we could find some early value as well.
yeah, that's news to me. I could appreciate they've definitely revised the rules around it, but didn't know there was a black and white, because otherwise you're talking about players, if the team didn't have the bye, you're talking about players instantly ruled out for 2 games. Can you imagine? I know this is pretty stupid to speculate, but like Burton doesn't play for the Bulldogs, 18th man, and then gets on with a couple of minutes to go or something, and then they say, no, you can't back up. Not aware of that one, but we definitely will look into, any rules or regulations that's going to affect round 14 and make our best pick. But no one wants to hear about round 14 right now. Hey, it's Maroon versus Blue. It's all on Wednesday, and like the drama just keeps building. And I didn't mention it, but like that Moses masterclass just adds an extra layer of pressure to Nico Hines getting his first opportunity as a starting player. And then what happens if Teddy's man of the match? Where does the Blues go from there? There's so many storylines. I'm all here for it. So we'll deep dive the game tomorrow and do an Origin pod on Monday. If you're still willing to tune in, you're still getting something out of the pod, then can't wait to see you guys then.
Absolutely. Monday, 5:30 p.m. Be there. We're looking forward to it, guys. From myself, thank you very much for being with us for our round 13 NRL recap. And I'll hand it over to you when you to say farewell and the famous last words.
Yeah, we'll be there in 24 hours. You know what? Honestly, I hope that I can put round 13 kind of near the midway of the season. That's why I just say, like, it's a horror half year. It's a long period of time to have results this bad. And I'm sorry to disappoint people, but I reckon it's not worthy of the famous words. So I will just leave you with my apology for not being up to the standard that this pod requires and deserves, and that our audience deserves, and do my best to be a lot better. And that starts tomorrow. We'll see you then. Thanks, guys.